I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't start a scene. I just spoke a single sentence at the Christmas dinner table, and my entire family froze. My mother, who had looked right through me for years, finally stared at me like I was a dangerous stranger. She didn't know that $150 million was just the beginning. By the time I was done, I hadn't saved them. I had ensured we could never go back. My name is Faith Stewart. For the first time in 10 years, I did not sleep in the twin bed with the lumpy mattress in the back room of my mother's house. I booked a suite at the Intercontinental on the plaza. It was a 20-minute drive from the suburbs where I grew up, a distance that felt like a necessary emotional airlock. I did not tell them I was in town the night before. I did not tell them I was staying in a room that cost more per night than my mother used to spend on groceries for a month. I simply arrived on Christmas Day, precisely at 11 in the morning. Like a guest, or perhaps like a ghost. Kansas City was buried under a fresh sheet of ice. The trees along the driveway were encased in crystal, beautiful and brittle, threatening to snap under the weight of their own decoration. It was the perfect metaphor for the house at the end of the cul-de-sac. From the outside, my mother's home was a masterpiece of suburban performance art. The wreath on the door was enormous, dusted with artificial snow. The lights lining the gutters were perfectly straight, likely installed by a handyman, because my father had long since checked out of such duties, and my brother, Logan, would never dirty his hands with manual labor. I sat in my rental car for a full 5 minutes before getting out. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked tired, but expensive. My coat was cashmere, structured and severe. My boots were Italian leather. I wore no jewelry except for a small, platinum watch that was worth more than the car Logan drove. I was not showing off. I was armoring up. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the heated leather seats one last time, and stepped out into the biting Midwestern cold. When I opened the front door, the heat hit me first. It was suffocatingly warm, smelling of sage, roasted turkey, and cinnamon candles. It was the smell of a Hallmark movie, engineered to trigger nostalgia. Faith, you made it. My mother, Denise, came out of the kitchen wiping her hands on a festive apron. She looked at me, but she did not really see me. Her eyes did a quick scan hair, coat, weight, and then darted immediately over my shoulder, as if expecting someone better to walk in behind me. When she realized I was alone, the light in her eyes dimmed by exactly 10%. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I said. I let her hug me. It was a light, performative squeeze. She smelled of hairspray and white wine. "You're late," she said, pulling back. "Logan is already pouring drinks. Come on, take that coat off. You look plain. Did you not bring a dress?" "This is what I am wearing," I said. My voice was steady. I had practiced this tone in boardrooms for the last 18 months. It was a tone that did not ask for permission. Mom blinked, confused by the lack of apology, but she didn't have time to process it. "Well, hurry up. Your brother has big news about his venture capital project. We were waiting for you to start the toast." I followed her into the dining room. The table was set with the good china, the set she used to threaten me not to touch when I was 7, and there was the hierarchy, laid out in porcelain and silverware. Logan was sitting at the head of the table. It used to be Dad's seat, but Dad was currently in the living room, staring at the television, making himself as small as possible until he was summoned. Logan sat there with his legs spread wide, leaning back in the chair as if it were a throne. He was wearing a suit that was too tight in the shoulders and too shiny in the light. The kind of suit that screams ambition without the capital to back it up. "There she is," Logan said. He didn't stand up. He raised a glass of scotch in my direction. "The prodigal sister returns from the land of, where are you living now?" "Still in that basement in Omaha." "Omaha," I said. "And it wasn't a basement." Right. A garden-level unit. Sounds fancy." Logan smirked. He looked at Mom, and she let out a small, breathless laugh. It was a reflex. If Logan made a joke, Denise laughed. That was the law of the Stewart household. I took my seat. It was the chair closest to the kitchen door. The one where the draft came through. It was the seat for the person expected to get up and refill the water pitchers. Mom sat to Logan's right. Dad shuffled in and sat to his left. I was across from an empty space. "So," Logan started, cutting into a piece of cheese from the appetizer platter. "Mom tells me you're still doing that app thing. What's it called? Pulse something." "Pulse Habit," I said. "Right. The health tracker," Logan said, rolling his eyes dramatically. "Because the world definitely needs another app to tell us to drink water. How's that going?" You still coding it yourself in a coffee shop? I unfolded my napkin and placed it on my lap. The fabric felt rough against my fingers. We have a team now. A team, Logan laughed. What, like 2 interns working for free pizza? Listen, Faith, I'm just looking out for you. The tech bubble is bursting. You can't just throw a generic product out there and expect to survive. My new venture, we're looking at blockchain integration for supply chain logistics. That is where the real money is. Scalability. He used words he had read in headlines but didn't understand. I watched him pour himself another drink. I watched Mom look at him with a gaze so full of adoration, it made my stomach turn. She looked at him like he was the sun, and she was a cold planet desperate for warmth. That sounds interesting. Logan, Mom said, you're so smart with business. Faith, you should listen to your brother. He knows the market. I picked up my water glass. I'm sure he does. The dinner was served. The turkey was dry. The conversation was drier. For 40 minutes, I listened to Logan talk about his potential investors and projected fourth-quarter yields for a company that I knew, for a fact, had not filed a tax return in 3 years. I knew this because I had hired a private investigator 2 weeks ago. I knew everything. I ate my potatoes. I watched my father chew slowly, eyes fixed on his plate, avoiding conflict. I watched my mother refill Logan's wine glass before he even asked. Then, the pivot happened. Logan was feeling good. The alcohol had hit his bloodstream, and his ego needed a target. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, invading my space from across the centerpiece. But seriously, Faith, he said, his voice dropping to that patronizing register he used when he wanted to make me feel small. Is that little garbage company of yours still alive, I mean? Really? Mom was saying you haven't asked for money in a while, which usually means you're maxing out credit cards. Do you need help with a resume? I know some people. I could probably get you an entry-level admin role. Mom smiled. It wasn't a malicious smile, which made it worse. It was a pitying smile. It's okay to admit if you're struggling. Honey, Logan is just offering to help. There's no shame in failing. We always knew that industry was competitive. The room went quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I placed my fork down. I aligned it perfectly parallel to my knife. I didn't fail, I said. Logan scoffed. Come on, be real. You're driving a rental car. You're wearing the same black clothes you always wear. You're not exactly projecting success here. Sis, how much runway do you have left? 2 months, 3? I don't have any runway left, I said. See? Logan slapped the table. I knew it. Folded. Kaput. I don't have runway, I continued, my voice not rising a single decibel. Because I sold the company. The silence that followed was different. It was confused. Logan frowned, his eyebrows knitting together. You sold it to who, some local gym chain? No. Well, did you get your investment back? He swirled his drink, looking bored, ready to move on to his next monologue. What did you get? A couple $100,000, enough to pay off your student loans. I looked at him. I looked at the brother who had taken the biggest bedroom, the biggest slice of cake, the biggest portion of our parents' love for 29 years. I looked at my mother, who had forgotten my birthday 3 years in a row, but threw Logan a festival for his 26th. I took a sip of water. I set the glass down. $150 million, I said. It was not a shout. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the same emotion as reading a weather report. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. The number hung in the air above the centerpiece, heavy and impossible. Then, my mother's fork hit her plate. Clang. The sound was sharp, violent in the quiet room. It skittered off the china and landed on the tablecloth. Her face was drained of color. The rouge on her cheeks suddenly looked like clown paint against her pale skin. She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, her eyes wide and unblinking. It was the look of someone seeing a ghost manifest in solid form. Logan froze. His glass was halfway to his mouth. He lowered it slowly, his hand trembling just enough to ripple the amber liquid. He looked at me, then at Mom, then back at me. He laughed, but it was a nervous, broken sound. What? Logan said. That's bullshit. The deal closed 5 days ago, I said, keeping my eyes locked on his. Summitwell Holdings acquired 100% of the equity. The wire transfer cleared yesterday morning. After taxes and the employee equity pool, my net payout was $150 million. I saw the gears turning in Logan's head. He was trying to find the lie. He was trying to find the joke, but he looked at my face, at the cold, dead seriousness in my eyes. and he realized I was not capable of telling a joke like that. He slumped back in his chair. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by a naked, terrifying jealousy. But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at my mother. I watched her process the information. I watched the shock turn into calculation. I watched the mother in her die a second death, replaced instantly by the manager of the family assets. She didn't ask if I was happy. She didn't ask how I did it. She didn't ask if I was proud. She leaned forward, her hand reaching out across the table, trembling as she sought my hand. Her voice was a whisper, breathless and desperate. "Faith," she said. "Oh my God, Faith." I waited. I waited for the apology. I waited for the recognition. "If you have that much," she said, her eyes darting to Logan and then back to me, shining with a sudden, manic hope. "Then you can help your brother. Can't you?" The air left the room. My father dropped his napkin. Even Logan looked shocked by the speed of her pivot. I looked at her hand, reaching for mine. I did not take it. I let her hand hover there in the empty space between us, grasping at air. I didn't answer right away. I let the question hang there, twisting in the wind. I let them sit in the silence, suffocating in it. I looked at the woman who had birthed me, and I felt something inside my chest harden into stone. I had come home with a question of my own. I had come to see if there was anything left of this family worth saving, or if I had simply returned to bury the corpse. And as I looked at her desperate, greedy eyes, I realized I might not be the savior they thought I was. I might be the reckoning. The silence in the dining room following my revelation was heavy, but to me, it felt familiar. It was the same silence that had filled the hallways of my childhood, a silence I had learned to navigate like a bat using echolocation. As I looked at my mother's stunned face, the years peeled back, and I was no longer a 29-year-old multimillionaire in a cashmere coat. I was 7 years old, standing in the kitchen, realizing that for the third night in a row, dinner was a concept, not a meal. My childhood was not a tragedy of abuse in the traditional sense. There were no beatings. There was no screaming. There was just a vast, echoing absence where attention should have been. I was what people called a self-raising child. While other kids had charts on the fridge reminding them to brush their teeth or pack their bags, I developed a mental checklist out of necessity. I remember coming home from second grade. The house would be dark because Mom was out driving Logan to soccer, or piano, or karate, whatever phase of genius he was currently inhabiting. I would drop my backpack by the door and walk to the kitchen. I was too short to reach the microwave properly, so I would drag a dining chair over to the counter. The routine was precise. Peel back the plastic corner of the frozen macaroni and cheese, set the timer for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Wait, that hum of the microwave became the soundtrack of my evenings. It was a lonely sound, mechanical and indifferent. While the turntable spun, I would do my homework at the kitchen island. I never had to be told to do it. I realized very early on that if I didn't sign my own permission slips, they wouldn't get signed. If I didn't wash my own gym uniform, I would go to school smelling like sweat. I became efficient not because I wanted to be a good girl, but because being a problem meant drawing attention. And in the Stewart house, attention was a finite resource that had already been allocated entirely to Logan. Logan was the sun. We all just orbited him, hoping to catch a little bit of the warmth that radiated off his ego. His birthdays were national holidays in our household. I remember his 10th birthday vividly. Mom rented a petting zoo. There were ponies in the backyard. She invited the entire neighborhood, even the people we didn't like, just so she could have an audience. She stood on the patio, holding a glass of Chardonnay, pointing at Logan as he terrorized a goat. She told everyone who would listen that he was a natural leader, that he had a commanding presence. My birthdays were different. They were afterthoughts, squeezed in between Logan's schedule. On my 10th birthday, 2 years after his pony extravaganza, I got a card and a gift certificate to a bookstore. Mom gave it to me while she was putting on her coat to take Logan to a travel hockey game. She kissed the top of my head, looking at her watch, and said she hoped I found something educational. Then she left. I spent my 10th birthday eating cereal and reading alone. I didn't cry. I think that was the year I stopped crying about it. I just ate the cereal. It wasn't just the events. It was the subtle daily affirmations that I didn't matter. When I was 12, I wanted to join a robotics club. The entry fee was $50. It included a kit and a t-shirt. I practiced my pitch for 3 days. I waited until Dad was home, thinking he might be an ally. They were in the living room. Logan was playing video games on a console that cost $300. I walked in and asked. I showed them the flyer. I explained how it would help with my math grades. even though my math grades were already perfect. Mom didn't even look up from her magazine. She gave me the line that would become the motto of my adolescence. "Faith, honey, you're so smart. You can figure things out on your own. You don't need a club for that. Besides, we just spent a fortune on Logan's goalie pads. You're the low-maintenance one. You're fine." Low maintenance. That was the label. It sounded like a compliment, like I was easy and good. But I knew what it really meant. It meant I was cheap. It meant I required zero investment. It meant I was a cactus in a house full of orchids I was expected to survive on nothing while they were watered daily. Dad sat there, hiding behind his newspaper. Graham Stewart was a man who had decided long ago that peace was more important than parenting. He worked long hours at an insurance firm, and when he came home, he wanted to be invisible. He loved me, I think, in a vague, abstract way, but he feared Mom's displeasure more than he feared my neglect. If he stood up for me, it would start a fight, so he stayed silent. He let her rewrite reality. The reality was visible on the walls. Our hallway was a shrine to Logan. There was Logan in his baseball uniform, Logan holding a participation trophy, Logan at prom, Logan, Logan, Logan. If you looked closely, you could find me. I was a blurry figure in the background of a shot taken at Disney World. I was an elbow at the edge of the frame during Thanksgiving. I was the back of a head in a Christmas morning photo where the focus was clearly on Logan opening a new PlayStation. I wasn't a member of the family. I was an extra in the movie of Logan's life. By the time I was 15, I started keeping a ledger. It wasn't a physical book. It was a mental spreadsheet. I had a mind for data even then. I tracked the flow of capital in the house, not just money, but emotional currency. Item, Logan crashes the car. Cost $2,000 for repairs. Consequence. Mom hugs him and says she is just glad he is safe. Item, Faith gets straight A's. Cost $0. Consequence. That's expected. Item, Logan wants to go to a specialized sports camp. Cost $4,000. Status approved immediately. Item, Faith needs braces. Cost $3,000. Status delayed for 2 years because money is tight right now. I watched the resources pour into a vessel that had holes in the bottom. Logan wasn't bad at everything, but he wasn't great at anything either. He was average, but Mom treated his mediocrity like brilliance. She threw money at his problems until they went away. If he failed a class, she hired a tutor. If he didn't make the team, she bought him better equipment. She was insulating him from the world. Me. I was exposed to the elements, and the elements made me tough. I stopped asking for things. That was the first step towards my freedom, though I didn't know it then. Asking was a vulnerability. Asking gave them the power to say no. So I removed the variable. I got a job the day I turned 16. I worked at a library, shelving books and cleaning the public computers. It wasn't glamorous. My hands smelled like dust and old paper, but every 2 weeks, I got a check. And that check was mine. I opened a bank account without telling them. I opted for paperless statements so no mail would come to the house. I watched the numbers grow. $200, $500, $1,000. The first major purchase I made was a laptop. It was a refurbished brick of a machine, a heavy black box with a fan that sounded like a jet engine taking off. I bought it from a guy on Craigslist for $150. I hid it under my bed. That laptop was my portal. While Logan was downstairs watching movies on the 60-inch plasma TV Mom had bought him for relaxation, I was in my room, learning. I taught myself how the internet worked. I learned about code. I learned that there was a world outside of Kansas City where low maintenance was actually called efficiency and was valued. I remember one night in particular. It was late, maybe 2 in the morning. I was 17. I was coding a simple website for a local bakery, my first freelance gig. Downstairs, I heard shouting. Logan had come home drunk. He had backed his car into the garage door. I heard Mom's voice, frantic and soothing. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. We'll fix it. Don't worry. Just come inside." I heard Dad sigh. The heavy, defeated sigh of a man writing another check in his head. I sat there in the dark, the blue light of my screen illuminating my hands. I paused my typing. I listened to the chaos below, and I realized something that terrified me. I felt nothing. I wasn't angry that he wrecked the car. I wasn't jealous that he was being comforted while I was ignored. I wasn't sad that my parents were flawed. I was indifferent. The bond had been severed. It hadn't snapped all at once. It had frayed, thread by thread, over 1,000 skipped meals and forgotten achievements, until there was nothing holding me to them anymore. I was a tenant in their house, a lodger who paid rent in silence and good grades. I looked at the code on my screen. It was clean. It was logical. If there was an error, it was my fault, and I could fix it. There was no favoritism in C++. There was no politics in HTML. It was a meritocracy. I went back to typing. The sound of my keystrokes drowned out the noise from downstairs. That was the night I truly left them. My body would stay in that house for another year until graduation, but my spirit had already packed its bags. I looked at the blurry reflection of myself in the dark monitor. I wasn't the girl in the background of the photo anymore. I was the architect of something new. I realized I didn't need them to look at me. In fact, their blindness was my advantage. While they were busy staring at Logan, ensuring he never stumbled, they never noticed that I was learning how to fly. I didn't disappear. I just learned to exist without them. Ridgeview Tech University was not the kind of place you went to find yourself. It was the kind of place you went to build yourself, usually out of caffeine, code, and desperation. It was a concrete campus, utilitarian and gray, filled with people who knew exactly what the starting salary for a junior back-end developer was in Seattle versus Austin. I fit right in. I had secured a partial scholarship, enough to cover tuition. But living expenses were my problem. My parents made too much money on paper for me to qualify for financial aid, but they contributed exactly $0 to my education. So, while Logan was presumably partying his way through a liberal arts degree funded by the bank of mom and dad, I became a fixture at a campus coffee shop called The Daily Grind. My life became a blur of binary code and burnt espresso. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, every single day. The world is different at that hour. It is quiet, hostile, and cold. I would walk the 6 blocks to the shop, my breath pluming in the air, my hands shoved deep into the pockets of a thrifted hoodie. By 5, I was tying on a green apron that smelled permanently of stale milk and sanitizer. My hands were always raw. That is the thing nobody tells you about being a barista. It is not the coffee that gets you. It is the washing, the hot water, the harsh soap, the endless cycle of scrubbing ceramic mugs. My knuckles cracked and bled in the dry winter air. I would wrap them in Band-Aids and keep moving. I poured lattes for students who looked as tired as I felt, and for professors who didn't look at me at all. Between shifts and lectures, I lived in the computer lab. I didn't have a social life. I didn't go to football games. I didn't date. I was a machine. I absorbed Java, Python, and C++ like they were oxygen. I sat in the back row, taking notes on my heavy, refurbished laptop, while the guys in the front row with their sleek MacBooks talked about disrupting industries they didn't understand yet. The idea for Pulse Habit didn't come from a stroke of genius. It came from the sound of complaining. In the computer lab, the air was always thick with stress. My peers were falling apart. They were brilliant, but they were biologically incompetent. I haven't eaten solid food in 2 days, a guy named Marcus groaned, his head resting on his keyboard. I think I've slept 4 hours this week, another girl replied, chugging an energy drink that looked radioactive. I keep forgetting to call my mom, someone else muttered. She thinks I'm dead. It was a chorus of dysfunction. I looked around and realized that we were all smart enough to build complex algorithms, but we were too stupid to take care of our basic human needs. We were optimizing code while letting our hardware, our bodies crash. I looked at the App Store. There were fitness apps, sure, but they were aggressive. They wanted you to run marathons. They wanted you to count macros. They were designed for people who were already healthy and wanted to be elite. There was nothing for the burnout generation. There was nothing for the people who just needed a gentle nudge to drink a glass of water or stand up and stretch. I opened a new project file. I called it Pulse. The first version was, frankly, a disaster. I built it over a semester break, working double shifts at the coffee shop to save up for a server. I coded at night, my eyes burning. The interface was a tragedy of gray buttons and Times New Roman font. It looked like a tax audit form. I released the beta to 10 people in my study group. The feedback was brutal. It works, Marcus said, trying to be nice. But looking at it makes me depressed. It feels like my doctor is yelling at me in text format. The user flow is clunky, another classmate said. I have to click 4 times just to log that I drank water. I'm too tired for 4 clicks. Faith. I didn't get defensive. I didn't have the ego for it. I took the feedback as data. Data is neutral. Data helps you iterate. I realized I was a good back-end engineer, but I had the artistic sensibility of a brick. So, I pivoted. I stopped coding for a month and started studying design. I couldn't afford a UI/UX course, so I devoured free content. I watched YouTube tutorials at double speed while I folded laundry. I read blogs about color theory on my phone while waiting for the bus. I learned about white space, about corner radius, about how a soft blue makes people feel calm while a harsh red makes them anxious. I rewrote the front end from scratch. I made it simple, minimalist, friendly. I changed the tone. Instead of a notification saying log water intake, the app said, "Hey, you look thirsty." Instead of sleep deficit detected, it said, "The code will still be there in the morning. Go to bed." I renamed it Pulse Habit. I launched version 2 quietly. I didn't have a marketing budget. I printed flyers in the library black and white. Because color printing cost 10 cents extra, and taped them up in the dorm bathrooms and the gym. Too tired to function. Let us remember to be human for you. I got 50 downloads the first week, then 100, then the reviews started coming in. I was scrubbing a milk pitcher in the back sink of the coffee shop when my phone buzzed in my apron pocket. It was a notification from the App Store developer console. I wiped my wet red hands on my jeans and pulled it out. 5 stars. I have severe anxiety and sometimes I forget to breathe. This app reminded me. It feels like a friend in my pocket. Thank you. I stared at the screen. The noise of the espresso machine faded away. The clatter of dishes disappeared. I read it again. Thank you. Another one popped up. 5 stars. Simple. Clean. It doesn't make me feel guilty for missing a day. It just welcomes me back. I walked into the staff bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold tile floor. I didn't sob. I just let the tears leak out. Hot and fast. For the first time in my life, I had made something that mattered. I had created value. And strangers, people who didn't know my last name, didn't know I was the low-maintenance child, saw me. They saw my work, and they called it good. It was a high better than any drug. It was the intoxication of competence. That night, intoxicated by that success, I made a mistake. I let my guard down. I wanted to share it. The child inside me, the one I thought I had starved into silence, woke up and demanded to be heard. I called my mother. It was 7 in the evening on a Tuesday. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. I could hear the television in the background. "Faith, is everything okay?" "You never call at this time." "Everything is fine." "Mom," I said, clutching my phone, pacing around my tiny dorm room. "Actually, it is better than fine. I wanted to tell you something. I built an app." "An app?" She sounded bored already. "Like a game." "No, it is a health tracker. It helps people manage stress and habits. I launched it last week, and I already have 500 users. People are leaving 5-star reviews. They say it is helping them." I waited. I held my breath. I wanted a good job. I wanted a, "Wow, that is impressive." "That's nice, honey," she said. Her voice was flat, automatic. "It is good you have a hobby to keep you busy. Listen, have you spoken to your brother lately?" The cold feeling washed over me, instantly extinguishing the warmth of the reviews. "No, he is thinking about changing his major again," she said, her voice suddenly animated, full of concern and energy. "He is so creative. You know, he feels stifled in business. He wants to do something with film. We are thinking of buying him some camera equipment, just to see if he likes it. Lenses are so expensive. Though, did you know a good lens can cost $2,000? I stood still. The contrast was so sharp it cut. I had built a product from nothing, taught myself a new skill, and gained market validation. Logan had a whim, and they were ready to write a check for thousands of dollars. "Faith, are you there?" "I'm here," I said. My voice was different now. It was the voice of the person who would eventually sell a company for $150 million. It was hard. "Anyway," she continued, "I just worry about him finding his passion. You are lucky, Faith. You can just do whatever it is you do. Logan feels things so deeply." "Yeah," I said. "I have to go. Mom, I have a shift." "Okay, take care. Oh, and if you come home for Thanksgiving, try not to wear those hoodies. You look like a boy." I hung up. I didn't cry this time. I looked at the phone in my hand. I looked at the 5-star review on the screen. I realized then that I could cure cancer, and she would still ask me why I couldn't be more like Logan, who had just discovered he enjoyed biology. That was the last time I sought her approval. I took that desire, that needy, pathetic part of myself, and I buried it under layers of ambition. I decided I would not build this for them. I would not build it to show them up. I would build it because I could. Because I was good at it. Because the market did not care about my childhood trauma. The market only cared about the product. I threw myself into the work with a terrifying intensity. I slept 4 hours a night. I coded during lectures. I answered customer support emails while I was on the toilet. Pulse Habit grew. It wasn't viral yet, but it was steady. It was real. 6 months later, I was sitting in the back of the coffee shop, stealing their Wi-Fi to run a server update. It was raining outside, a gray, miserable drizzle. My inbox was open. I was scrolling through user feedback and bug reports when a subject line caught my eye. It wasn't from a user. It wasn't from the university. It was from a generic, no-reply address associated with a credit monitoring bureau. Subject alert. New inquiry on your credit report. I frowned. I hadn't applied for a credit card. I hadn't applied for a loan. I was driving a car I bought for cash, and I paid my tuition with a debit card. I clicked it open. A credit inquiry has been initiated by L.S. Ventures. Denise Stewart. My hand froze on the trackpad. A cold shiver, colder than the Kansas winter, went down my spine. L. Ventures, Logan Stewart, and my mother's name next to it. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. Why was my mother checking my credit? And why was it linked to a venture named after my brother? I didn't know it then. But that email was the first loose thread. If I pulled it, the whole tapestry of lies my family had woven would unravel. But in that moment, sitting in a coffee shop with wet socks and a tired heart, I just felt a deep, vibrating sense of dread. I closed the laptop, but I didn't delete the email. I filed it into a folder I named Simply Evidence. I graduated from Ridgeview Tech in 3 years flat. I did not walk across the stage. I did not buy the gown or the cap with the tassel. I viewed the graduation ceremony as an inefficiency, a 4-hour event that would cost me $50 in rental fees and a morning of lost productivity. I had the registrar mail my diploma to my P.O. box. When it arrived in a stiff cardboard envelope, I didn't frame it. I put it in a drawer beneath a stack of server logs. To me, the degree was just a receipt proof that I had paid my dues and survived the system. I had overloaded my schedule every semester, taking 21 credits at a time, fueled by panic and the desperate need to stop bleeding money on tuition. Every month I stayed in school was another month of debt. I sprinted toward the exit while everyone else was enjoying the stroll. By the time I was 22, I was free. I moved to Omaha. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a tech hub like San Francisco or Austin, where venture capitalists threw money at anyone with a Patagonia vest and a pitch deck. It was quiet. It was affordable. And most importantly, it was 3 hours away from Kansas City, close enough to drive if there was an emergency, but far enough that nobody would drop by for a surprise visit. I rented an office in a strip mall sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a failing insurance agency. The carpet was a shade of industrial brown that seemed designed to hide coffee stains, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a low, headache-inducing buzz. The rent was $600 a month. It was the first piece of property I had ever controlled. It was my kingdom. I sat on a second-hand Aeron chair I had salvaged from a liquidation sale, surrounded by bare drywall, and I officially incorporated Pulse Habit. I needed help. I couldn't code the back end, handle customer support, and design the marketing assets all at once. I needed clones, but I couldn't afford clones. I could only afford believers. I hired Leo first. He was 19, a college dropout who looked like he hadn't seen the sun in a decade. He came to the interview wearing a t-shirt that said, "There is no place like 127.0.0.01, and showed me a portfolio of code that was messy but brilliant. He reminded me of myself, hungry, socially awkward, and desperate for a chance. Then I hired Sarah. She was older, a single mother who had taught herself Swift in the evenings after her kids went to sleep. She didn't have a degree from MIT. She had grit. We were a team of strays. "We don't have a ping-pong table," I told them on their first day. "We don't have free catered lunches. But if this works, you will own a piece of it. I am giving you equity." They took the deal. We worked in that tiny room, knees bumping against cheap IKEA desks. The smell of the dry cleaner's chemicals seeped through the walls, mixing with the scent of our cheap coffee. It wasn't the startup dream you see in movies. There were no beanbag chairs. There was just the click-clack of mechanical keyboards and the sound of Sarah taking calls from users in the hallway because we didn't have a conference room. Pulse Habit grew. It didn't explode overnight. It wasn't a viral sensation that burned out in a month. It was a slow, steady climb. We focused on communities that the big tech giants ignored. I went to local gyms and pitched the app to trainers. I went to therapy groups and spoke to counselors about how the app could help their patients track mood swings. We were solving a real problem. People were tired of being yelled at by their technology. They wanted a tool that felt like a companion. Word of mouth started to spread. A popular yoga instructor in Denver blogged about us. A mental health advocate on TikTok showed how she used our mood journal feature. We introduced the premium tier, $4.99 a month. The first day we turned on the payment gateway. I stared at the dashboard. New subscriber. New subscriber. New subscriber. By the end of the first month, our revenue covered the rent and the server costs. By the end of the third month, I could pay Leo and Sarah a real salary. I was making money, real money, for the first time in my life. I looked at my bank account and saw a number that didn't make my chest tight. But I didn't change. I still drove my beat-up Honda Civic with a dent in the bumper. I still wore the same black hoodies and jeans. I lived in a studio apartment that was basically a closet with a window. I was hoarding resources. I was terrified that if I spent a dime on luxury, the universe would realize there had been a clerical error and take it all back. Meanwhile, the updates from Kansas City were painting a very different picture. I maintained a low-contact relationship with my mother. We spoke maybe once every 2 weeks. The calls were always the same. She would talk for 15 minutes, and I would listen, making non-committal noises while I answered emails on my second monitor. Logan is moving to Los Angeles, she announced one Tuesday. Oh, I said, typing a line of code. What for? He is going to be a producer. He met someone who knows a director, and they have this incredible concept for a reality show. It is going to be huge. Faith, really huge. That sounds ambitious, I said. It is expensive. Of course. She sighed, the martyr tone creeping in. Living in LA is not cheap. We had to help him with the first 6 months of rent, and he needed a car that fits the image. You know, you can't show up to meetings in a junker. Right, I said. How much? Well, the lease was $4,000 a month, but it is an investment. We are investing in his future. I looked around my office. I looked at the stain on the carpet. I looked at Leo, who was eating a sandwich he had brought from home because he was saving up for a new graphics card. My rent was $600. Logan's rent was $4,000. And how is your little computer thing going? She asked, almost as an afterthought. It is fine, I said. We are profitable. That is nice, dear. Just don't work too hard. You sound tired. You know, Logan says networking is more important than hard work. Maybe you should try to meet people. She didn't ask if I needed money. She never asked. It never occurred to her that I might need help. Because in her mind, I was the one who didn't need anything. I was the cactus. Logan was the orchid. You don't water the cactus. I hung up the phone and went back to work. I worked until midnight. I worked until my eyes blurred. Anger is a potent fuel, cleaner burning than gasoline. 6 months later, we hit a milestone, 100,000 active monthly users. That is the number where the sharks start circling. I got an email from a venture capital firm in Chicago. They wanted a meeting. I put on a blazer over my t-shirt. I drove to the meeting in my Honda, parking it around the corner so they wouldn't see it. The partner, a man named Mr. Henderson, sat across from me in a glass-walled conference room that cost more than my entire company. He looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. We like what you have built, Faith, he said. It is sticky. The retention numbers are impressive, but you are small. You are vulnerable. We want to inject $2 million. $2 million. The number hung in the air. In exchange for what? I asked. 40% equity, he said, smiling like he was doing me a favor. And 2 seats on the board. We would bring in a seasoned CEO to help you scale. You would stay on as chief product officer. Of course. He wanted to buy my baby and hire a babysitter to run it. He wanted to take the wheel. I thought about Logan. I thought about my mother writing checks for potential. I thought about the years of being told I was the background character. If I took his money, I would be answering to him. I would be asking for permission again. No, I said. Mr. Henderson blinked. Excuse me. I am not giving up 40%, and I am not stepping down as CEO. I built this from a laptop in a coffee shop. I know the code. I know the users. I don't need a seasoned CEO to tell me how to run a company that helps people breathe. You are playing a dangerous game, he said, his smile vanishing. You will run out of cash. We are cash flow positive, I said, standing up. I don't need your money to survive. I only want it to move faster. If you want in, the valuation is $10 million, and I am selling 10%. Take it or leave it. I walked out. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I thought I had blown it. I thought I had just torched a lottery ticket. By the time I got back to Omaha, I had 3 missed calls from him. He took the deal. We started the due diligence process. This is the part where lawyers comb through your life with a fine-toothed comb to make sure you aren't laundering money or hiding lawsuits. I hired a local attorney, a sharp woman named Elena, to handle my side of the paperwork 2 days before we were set to sign. Elena called me. "Faith, can you come to my office? We have a hiccup." I drove over immediately, my stomach churning. Had I messed up the taxes? Was there a patent troll? Elena was sitting behind her desk, a stack of papers in front of her. She looked uncomfortable. "The background check on your personal finances came back," she said. "The VC firm runs a deep check on all founders. It is standard." "And," I asked, "I have a 750 credit score. I have 0 debt." "Technically, that is true," Elena said. "But there is a flag on your history. It is a guarantor agreement for a line of credit." "I never signed a guarantor agreement." Elena slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a photocopy of a document. Home equity line of credit modification. Principal borrower Denise Stewart. Co-borrower guarantor Logan Stewart. Secondary guarantor Faith Stewart. The date was from 3 years ago. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. It looked like my name. It was a loop, a scratch, a dot. It was a good imitation, but I knew how I signed my name. I crossed my T with a sharp, downward slant. This T was flat. "I didn't sign this," I whispered. "I was in college. I was living in the dorms." "It is notarized," Elena said softly. "The notary stamp belongs to a woman named Janice Miller." Janice Miller, my mother's best friend from the bridge club. The room seemed to tilt. The text on the page swam before my eyes. This wasn't just a credit inquiry like I had seen before. This was a liability. This was a debt. They had used my name. My clean credit history, the history I had built by eating ramen and working double shifts to secure a loan for the house, or for Logan. It didn't matter. They had stolen my identity. "What does this mean?" I asked, my voice trembling with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. "It means," Elena said, "that if they default on this loan, the bank comes after you. It means your assets, this company, your equity, that $2 million you are about to close could be at risk." I sat back in the chair. I thought about the Christmas dinners where I was ignored. I thought about the low-maintenance label. I thought about my mother's voice saying, "Family helps family." They hadn't just ignored me. They had harvested me. They saw me as a resource to be tapped when the golden child needed more water. "Can we fix it?" I asked. "We can report it as fraud," Elena said. "But that involves a police report. An investigation. It would likely blow up the deal with the investors if they find out you are in a legal battle with your own family." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. "Don't report it yet. Not yet." I opened my eyes. "Bury it for now. Tell the investors it is a resolved administrative error. I will pay off whatever lien is necessary to clear the title for the background check personally, if I have to. But keep the documentation. Keep the original copies." "Faith," Elena warned, "this is dangerous." "I know," I said. "But I am not going to let them destroy this deal, and I am not going to let them get away with it." I picked up the photocopy. I looked at the forged signature one more time. It was the moment the last thread of affection snapped. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their creditor, and one day, I was going to call in the debt. The growth of Pulse Habit over the next 18 months was not a curve. It was a vertical line. We were no longer just an app on a phone screen. We were a lifestyle. We secured a partnership with a major smartwatch manufacturer, integrating our stress-tracking algorithm directly into their hardware. Suddenly, my code was on the wrists of 2 million people. We expanded the platform to include telehealth integrations, allowing users to share their mood data directly with their therapists. We were saving lives, quite literally. We had testimonials from people who said the app's gentle nudges to breathe or call a friend had pulled them back from the edge. Success smells like ozone and expensive coffee. It smells like fresh drywall in a 10,000 square foot office in downtown Omaha, which is where we moved after we outgrew the strip mall. But with success came the sharks. The first offer came from a data conglomerate called Apex Global. They flew me to New York on a private jet. It was my first time flying private. The seats were cream-colored leather, and the champagne was chilled to exactly 42 degrees. I drank water. The meeting took place in a boardroom that overlooked Central Park. The CEO of Apex was a man named Mr. Sterling, who had teeth that were too white and a tan that was too orange. He slid a term sheet across the mahogany table. $80 million, he said. leaning back as if he had just handed me the keys to the kingdom. Cash and stock. We acquire the IP, the user base, and the team. You stay on for a transition period of 6 months. Then you are free to retire to a beach somewhere. I read the term sheet. I read the fine print. Clause 14B, I said, tapping the paper. Data monetization and third-party advertising integration. Standard language. Sterling waved his hand dismissively. We have a robust ad network. Your users are highly engaged. We can serve them targeted ads for pharmaceuticals, supplements, insurance. The revenue potential is massive. I looked at him. I thought about the girl who wrote to me saying the app helped her manage her panic attacks. I thought about the single dad who used it to remember to eat. You want to show ads for antidepressants to people who are logging that they feel sad? I asked. That is how the ecosystem works. Faith, it is synergy. It is predatory, I said. I stood up. The answer is no. Sterling's smile faltered. You are walking away from $80 million. You are a kid from Kansas. Do you have any idea what you are doing? I am protecting my users, I said. And I am not a kid. I am the CEO of a company you cannot afford because you do not understand its value. I walked out. I took a commercial flight home. Economy class. I sat in the middle seat, wedged between a crying baby and a man eating a tuna sandwich, and I felt absolutely triumphant. My refusal to sell to Apex leaked to the press. TechCrunch ran a story, the founder who said no to 80 million. That article was better than any marketing campaign. It signaled to the market that Pulse Habit was not just a product, it was a fortress of integrity. Other offers started coming in, better offers, companies that wanted the technology, not just the data. The valuation climbed. 100 million, 120 million. I realized I was out of my depth legally. I was a coder, not a corporate shark. I needed armor. I hired a team, not a local attorney this time, but a firm from Chicago that specialized in mergers and acquisitions. I hired a forensic accountant named Marcus, a man with glasses so thick they magnified his eyes, who could find a missing penny in a billion-dollar ledger. For the first time in my life, I was the one writing the checks to people who were sworn to protect me. It was a strange, heady sensation. Growing up, protection was something I had to scavenge for. Now, I could buy it by the hour. I want you to scrub everything, I told Marcus. I am preparing for a sale. I want my financials to be bulletproof, personal and professional. If there is a single loose thread, I want to know about it. Marcus went to work, while he dug through the digital paper trail of my life. I wrestled with a question that had nothing to do with business. Why was I doing this? I didn't need $150 million. I lived on $40,000 a year. I was happy with my small apartment and my work. I realized, in a therapy session I paid $300 an hour for, that I wasn't building a fortune. I was building a mirror. I wanted to make myself so big, so bright, so undeniably significant that my mother would have no choice but to look at me. I wanted to force the issue. If I came home as a titan of industry, would she still treat me like the invisible girl? Would she see me, Faith, or would she just see the glare of the gold? It was a dangerous experiment. It was asking a question I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to. Then, Marcus asked for a meeting. He came into my office and closed the door. He didn't sit down. We have a problem with your personal credit history, he said. I know, I said, rubbing my temples. The guarantor form from 3 years ago, the forgery, we blocked it, right? That was just the tip of the iceberg. Faith, Marcus said. He laid a file on my desk. Since we started the audit for the sale, I ran a deeper trace on all entities associated with your social security number and your family's address. I found this. He pointed to a document. It was a lien. What is this? It is a business loan taken out 2 years ago by a company called LS Media Group. Marcus explained. The principal is Logan Stewart. The collateral for the loan is the property at 42 Maple Drive. My parents' house, my childhood home. Okay, I said slowly. My parents put their house up for Logan's business. That is their choice. It is stupid, but it is their choice. Look at the cosigner, Marcus said. I looked. Cosigner Faith Stewart. I didn't sign this, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I definitely didn't sign this. I know, Marcus said. The signature is a stamp, a digital stamp that mimics your signature. But legally, on the face of it, you are liable. And here is the kicker, the loan is in default. LS Media Group hasn't made a payment in 4 months. The bank is preparing to foreclose. They haven't served the papers yet because they are likely trying to restructure, but it is coming. I stared at the paper. Logan had failed. Again, his media empire was a sham. And instead of letting him fail, my mother had not only bet her own house, she had bet my future. She had used my name, my credit, my identity, to prop up his house of cards. She knew I had a company. She knew I had assets. She positioned me as the safety net without ever asking my permission. If Pulse Habit sold, and this debt came to light, the creditors could come after my payout. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "We can file a criminal complaint right now. Identity theft. Fraud. We can send the police to your mother's door." I closed my eyes. I imagined the police cars in the driveway. I imagined the weeping. I imagined the narrative Faith, the heartless daughter, sending her own brother to jail. "No," I said. "Not yet." I opened my eyes. "Buy the debt." Marcus blinked. "Excuse me. The bank wants their money, right? They don't care who pays them. I want to buy the note. I want to become the creditor, create a shell company, make it anonymous, buy the debt from the bank for the full amount plus a premium if necessary to get it done fast. I want to own the mortgage on my parents' house, and I want to hold the note on Logan's business loan." "Faith," Marcus said, "that will cost you nearly $400,000 of your personal liquid cash. And if the sale doesn't go through, do it," I commanded. I want the leverage. I didn't want to burn them down. I wanted to hold the match. I wanted to walk into that house knowing that I owned the roof over their heads, not because they gave it to me, but because I bought it to save them from their own stupidity. 2 weeks later, the deal with Summitwell Holdings was finalized. It was the perfect buyer. They were a healthcare conglomerate that wanted to keep the app independent but use our data to improve patient outcomes in hospitals. No ads, no data mining, and the price was right. $150 million. I sat in the main conference room of my lawyer's office. The table was covered in documents. The representatives from Summitwell were across from me, smiling. "Just one more signature, Ms. Stewart," their lead counsel said, sliding the heavy bound document toward me. This was it, the finish line, the moment that would change my life forever. I picked up the pen. It was a heavy, expensive fountain pen. My phone, sitting face up on the table, buzzed. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was a text message. The name on the screen was Mom. I hadn't heard from her in 3 months, not since I told her I was too busy to come home for Thanksgiving. I looked at the preview message. "Mom Faith, are you coming for Christmas, please? The family needs you. Logan is going through a hard time." I stared at the words. The family needs you. She didn't know I was about to become a centimillionaire. She didn't know I owned the debt that was choking them. She just knew that Logan was in trouble. And when Logan was in trouble, she reached for me not to love me, but to use me. She needed a resource. She needed a buffer. She had no idea that the hard time Logan was going through was a foreclosure that I now controlled. A cold, bitter smile touched my lips. "Ms. Stewart," the lawyer asked, "is everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "Everything is perfect." I signed the paper. The ink flowed dark and permanent onto the page. "Faith Stewart." I put the pen down. I looked at the phone again. I typed a reply. "I'm coming home." I didn't hit send yet. I watched the status bar. I was coming home. All right, but I wasn't coming home as the daughter they could ignore. I was coming home as the landlord. I was coming home as the bank. I was coming home as the consequence they never saw coming. I hit send. The closing of the deal was not a fireworks display. It was a digital refresh of a browser window. I was sitting in my apartment in Omaha, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt I had owned since my sophomore year of college. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. The screen flickered, and the balance in my primary checking account updated. $150 million. I stared at the number. It was so large it felt abstract, like a coordinate in space or a serial number for a piece of heavy machinery. I refreshed the page again, just to be sure. It was still there. I expected to feel a rush of euphoria. I expected to feel lighter, as if gravity had suddenly decided to loosen its grip on my bones. I expected to want to scream, to run out onto the balcony and shout at the city that I had won. Instead, I felt a profound, echoing silence. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of tap water. I drank it standing over the sink. I looked around my studio apartment. It was the same apartment. The faucet still dripped. The neighbor's dog was still barking down the hall. I was the same person, just with a database entry that said I could buy the entire building if I wanted to. I had already taken care of the team. That was the one moment of genuine emotion. When I handed Leo and Sarah their payout checks amounts, That meant they would never have to worry about rent or student loans again. They had both cried. Sarah had hugged me so hard I lost my breath. I felt a glow then, a warm hum of competence and leadership. But now that I was alone, the glow had faded, leaving behind a cold gray ash. I was rich, I was free, and I was completely alone. The next day, I sat in the office of Dr. Eris. The room was beige, filled with the scent of lavender and old books. I had been seeing her for 6 months, ever since the stress of the acquisition negotiations had started to make my hands shake uncontrollably. "The money is in the bank," I told her. I was picking at a loose thread on the arm of the sofa. "How does it feel?" Dr. Eris asked. She had a way of looking at me that was penetrating but not invasive. "It feels like nothing," I said. "It feels like I finished a marathon, and there is no finish line, just more road." "What were you expecting the money to do?" "Faith." I looked out the window at the gray Omaha sky. "I don't know. I think I expected it to make me real. I thought if I had this number attached to my name, I would suddenly have mass, gravity. I thought people would have to stop walking through me." Dr. Eris nodded slowly. She scribbled something in her notebook. "When you say people, you mean your family. I guess we have talked about this," she said, her voice gentle. "The neglect you experienced wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It was the absence of sound. It was a vacuum. And vacuums are painful because they try to suck everything inside them to fill the void. You have spent your entire life trying to become dense enough, heavy enough, to fill that empty space in your mother's attention. It didn't work," I said. "I am worth $150 million, and I'm still terrified to answer her text messages, because you are still waiting for them to validate you," Dr. Eris said. "You are hoping the money will be the ticket that buys you admission into the family. But Faith, you cannot buy what they do not have to give. Your mother is a narcissist who views her children as extensions of herself. Your brother is a golden child who never learned to walk on his own. Money will not fix their eyes. It will only make them stare at your wallet." I sat with that. It was a hard pill to swallow, bitter and chalky. "So what do I do?" I asked. "Do I never speak to them again?" "You could," she said. "That is a valid choice. But you seem unresolved. You have this secret, the money, the debt you bought. You are holding a lot of power, but you are still acting like the victim." She leaned forward. "Go home for Christmas," she suggested. I stiffened. "I can't. I will regress. I will turn into the 12-year-old girl washing dishes while they open presents." "Go home," she repeated. "But not as a daughter seeking approval. Go as a scientist. Go as an observer. Make it an experiment. Do not sleep in their house. Do not engage in their dramas. Just watch them. Watch them like you watch your user data. See them for who they actually are, not who you want them to be." I thought about it. An experiment. I was good at experiments. I was good at data collection. "Boundaries," I said. "Strict ones," she agreed. "You are an adult woman. You are a CEO. You are not their servant. If it gets toxic, you leave. You have the means to leave. You can fly out 10 minutes after you arrive if you want to. That is what the money gives you. Faith. It doesn't give you love, but it gives you options." I left her office with a strange sense of resolve. I wasn't going home to be part of the family. I was going home to inspect an acquisition. I booked the suite at the Intercontinental. I rented the car. I made the reservations. Then came the shopping. In the past, I would have agonizingly overthought the gifts. I would have spent thousands of dollars I didn't have, trying to find the perfect cashmere sweater for Mom or the latest gadget for Logan, hoping that a grand gesture would buy me a seat at the head of the table. I would have wrapped them in expensive paper with hand-tied bows. This time, I went to a standard department store. For Mom, I bought a nice, but generic, silk scarf. It was blue. I didn't even check if it matched her coat. For Dad, I bought a biography of a historical figure he had never mentioned. For Logan, I bought a leather toiletry bag. It was functional. It was boring. It was the kind of gift you give a distant cousin. I wrapped them in the store's free gift packaging. I packed my suitcase. I packed my black turtlenecks, my structured blazers, my boots. I wasn't going to dress up for them. I wasn't going to wear the pastel colors Mom always said made me look softer. I was wearing my armor. The drive from Omaha to Kansas City takes about 3 hours. The highway is a long, flat ribbon of gray asphalt, cutting through frozen fields. I drove in silence. I didn't listen to music. I didn't listen to podcasts. I let my mind run the simulation. I had the secret of the $150 million. I had the secret of the debt. I was holding 2 grenades in my pocket, and they had no idea. I gripped the steering wheel. What if I told them I played the scene out in my head? I walk in. I drop the bank statement on the turkey. What does Denise Stewart say? Does she cry? Does she hug me and say, "I am so sorry I missed this. I am so sorry I underestimated you. You are incredible." Or does she say, "Thank God. Now you can save Logan"? The thought made my stomach twist. I knew the answer. Deep down, in the marrow of my bones, I knew, but the child in me, the little girl who ate macaroni alone in the dark, was still whispering, "Maybe this time will be different." I needed to know. That was why I was going. I needed to see the look on her face when the truth came out. I needed to see if there was any love there, or if it was all just calculation. My phone was sitting in the cup holder. I decided to test the waters. I picked it up and voice-to-texted a message to my mother. "I am on my way. I will be there in 2 hours." I put the phone down. Usually, when I texted Mom, it took her hours to reply. Sometimes days. Sometimes she didn't reply at all. And I would get a text from Dad 3 days later saying, "Mom got your message." The phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It had been less than 30 seconds. "Mom, wonderful. We are so excited. Drive safe. How is work going? Everything steady?" I frowned. How is work going? She never asked that. She usually asked if I was still doing that computer thing. She usually asked if I was finally going to get a real job. Everything steady. The wording was specific. It was probing. It felt like a credit check disguised as a greeting. I felt a prickle of unease on the back of my neck. Did she know? It was impossible. The sale was private. The press release hadn't gone out yet. The debt purchase was done through a shell company called Hollow Creek LLC. My name wasn't on the public documents, but mothers, even narcissistic, neglectful mothers, have an instinct. They can smell a change in the atmosphere. She sensed a shift in power. She didn't know I was rich, but she knew I wasn't the same desperate, scraping creature I had been the year before. She could smell the confidence, or maybe she could smell the money, like a shark smells a drop of blood in an ocean. I didn't reply. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Let her wonder. Let her sweat. I pressed my foot down on the accelerator. The rental car surged forward, eating up the miles between me and the past. I wasn't Faith the daughter anymore. I was Faith the chief executive officer. And I was walking into a hostile boardroom meeting disguised as a Christmas dinner. The moment I stepped across the threshold of my mother's house, I felt the familiar, suffocating weight of the past settle onto my shoulders. It was a physical sensation, heavy and stifling, like walking into a room filled with stagnant water. The house was exactly as I remembered it. That was the most disturbing part. It wasn't just similar, it was preserved, frozen in the amber of my childhood. The same beige carpet with the flattened path leading to the kitchen, the same fake ficus tree in the corner, gathering dust on its plastic leaves, the same overwhelming scent of cinnamon broomsticks and potpourri that my mother used to mask the smell of mediocrity. It was a museum dedicated to a time I had spent a decade trying to forget. Faith, there you are. My mother, Denise, appeared from the kitchen. She was wearing a festive red sweater with sequins around the collar, her hair coiffed into a helmet of blonde perfection. She stopped a few feet away from me, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. She didn't hug me immediately. She assessed me. "That is a lovely coat," she said, reaching out to touch the sleeve of my cashmere trench. "It feels soft. Is it wool blend?" "You have to be careful with that fabric. Faith, dry cleaning is so expensive these days. I hope you checked the care label before you bought it." "It is pure cashmere, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "And I can handle the dry cleaning." "Well, aren't we fancy?" She laughed, a brittle, tinkling sound. She finally leaned in for a hug. It was brief. She patted my back twice, the universal signal for that is enough, and pulled away. "You look thin. Are you eating? I bet you are just working all the time on that little computer project of yours." She didn't wait for an answer. She didn't actually want to know if I was eating or if my little computer project had just been acquired for a sum that could buy this entire neighborhood. She pivoted on her heel, her attention already snapping to the living room like a magnetic compass finding true north. "Come on in," she beckoned. "Logan is just telling us about his new venture. It is incredible. Faith, he is going to revolutionize well. He can explain it better. He is so articulate." I followed her into the living room. Logan was standing by the fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel, holding a glass of scotch. He looked like he was posing for a magazine cover that didn't exist. He was wearing a velvet blazer that was trying too hard. paired with jeans that were distressed in a way that cost money but looked cheap. "The prodigal sister," Logan announced, raising his glass. "Welcome back to the suburbs. Try not to get any code on the furniture." "Hello, Logan," I said. He grinned. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You missed the intro. I was just telling Mom and Dad about VisionStream. It is my new media consulting firm. We are pivoting to AI-generated content for influencers. The margins are going to be insane. I am talking $10,000 a month in passive income by Q3. I looked at him. I knew for a fact that VisionStream was not a registered entity. I knew this because my forensic accountant, Marcus, had run a full background check on him. I knew that Logan had been unemployed for 8 months. I knew that the scotch he was drinking was likely paid for with the credit card my mother was secretly paying off. "Sounds fascinating," I said. "Do you have clients?" Logan's smile tightened at the edges. "We are in the seed phase. Faith, you don't just get clients. You build the brand architecture first. You wouldn't understand. Your app is what? A utility. This is media. This is high level." "Right?" I said. "High level." Dad was sitting in his recliner, looking smaller than I remembered. He offered me a weak smile. "Hi, honey. Good trip?" "It was fine. Dad? Easy drive?" "That is good," he said, and then his eyes drifted back to the television, which was muted but flickering with football highlights. He had checked out of this conversation 20 years ago. "Faith, don't just stand there." Mom bustled in, holding a tray of appetizers. "Come into the kitchen. I need help peeling the potatoes. You know how to do it just right. Logan hates getting his hands sticky." There it was, the assignment of roles. In the script of the Stewart family, Logan was the star, Dad was the audience, Mom was the director, and I was the stagehand. I was expected to go into the kitchen, put on an apron, and silently facilitate the comfort of the others. I felt a flash of irritation, sharp and hot. But then I remembered Dr. Eris. Be a scientist. Observe. "I actually need to wash up first," I said smoothly. "I will be out in a minute." I didn't go to the kitchen. I went to the guest bathroom. I stood in front of the mirror and took a deep breath. I was not going to peel potatoes. I was not going to scrub pans. I was a guest. I had booked a hotel room. I had drawn a line in the sand, even if they couldn't see it yet. When I came out, I walked past the kitchen. "Faith," Mom called out. "The peeler is in the drawer." "I think I will sit with Dad for a bit," I called back, my voice cheerful and deaf to her command. "I haven't seen him in a year." I walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. From the kitchen, I heard the sharp clatter of a metal bowl being set down hard. Mom was annoyed. Good. I watched Logan. He was pacing the room, checking his phone, looking important. "So," he said, looking down at me. "Still living in that shoebox in Omaha." "I am still in Omaha," I said, "and the car still driving that Honda. It gets me from point A to point B." He chuckled, shaking his head. "God, you have no imagination. Faith, you make a little money, and you just sit on it. If I had your stability, I would be leveraging it. I would be in crypto. I would be flipping real estate." "Is that what you're doing with the loan from Mom?" I asked. The room went very quiet. Logan froze. His eyes darted to the kitchen to make sure Mom hadn't heard. "What loan? I don't know what you're talking about. Mom helps out with logistics sometimes, but I'm fully independent." "Of course," I said. My mistake. I watched his heart rate visibly increase. He took a large gulp of scotch. I had fired a warning shot, a small one, just to see if he would flinch. He flinched. Mom came in with the wine bottle. She went straight to Logan. "Here you go, sweetheart. A nice Cabernet. It breathes well." She poured him a generous glass. She poured Dad a glass. Then she looked at me. "Oh, Faith, I didn't grab a glass for you. There are some tumblers in the cabinet if you want water, or there is juice." "I am fine," I said. She sat down next to Logan, arranging her skirt. She looked at him with that hungry, desperate adoration. "Tell your sister about the meeting you had with that producer in LA, the one who did the car commercial." "It wasn't just a car commercial, Mom," Logan corrected her, annoyed. "He did a Super Bowl spot 3 years ago. And yeah, we grabbed coffee. He loved my energy. He said I have screen presence." "See?" Mom beamed at me. "Screen presence. Logan is going to be famous. Faith, you should be taking notes. Maybe he can help you market your app. What is it called again? Habit Pulse." "Pulse Habit," I said. "Right, whatever. Logan could probably design a better logo for you. He has such an eye for aesthetics." I took a sip of nothing, just swallowing the air in the room. "We actually have a design team. We are doing okay. A team, Logan scoffed. You mean those 2 kids you hired? Please, Faith, you are playing store. Real business is about connections. It is about who you know. I am building a network. Network doesn't pay the mortgage, I said. Faith, Mom snapped. Don't be negative. Why do you always have to bring the mood down? Your brother is dreaming big. You should support him. I am just listening, I said. You are judging, Mom said. You always judge. Just like when you were little, sitting in the corner reading your books while everyone else was having fun. You think you are better than us because you what? Because you pay your own electric bill. I think being solvent is a good baseline, I said. Money isn't everything, Logan said, assuming the moral high ground of the destitute. Passion matters. Vision matters. Easy to say when someone else is funding the vision, I murmured. What was that? Logan stepped closer. I said, the appetizers are delicious. I lied. The evening wore on in a series of small, sharp cuts. At dinner, Mom served Logan the largest piece of breast meat. She gave me the thigh, the dark meat. Even though she knew I preferred white meat, it was petty. It was childish. It was perfect data. Every time I tried to speak, to answer a question Dad mumbled, or to steer the conversation to a neutral topic, Logan or Mom would interrupt. I went to Europe last spring for a conference, I started to say. Oh, Europe, Logan cut in. I am thinking of doing a residency in Berlin. The art scene there is raw. I feel like I would vibe with it. You don't speak German, I noted. Language is archaic. Logan waved his hand. Art is universal. Mom nodded in agreement, as if he had just recited Shakespeare. He is so right. Berlin would be lucky to have you. I stopped trying to talk. I sat back and watched them. It was like watching a play where the actors had forgotten their lines but were refusing to leave the stage. They were terrified of silence, because in the silence, the truth might creep in. The truth that Logan was a failure. The truth that Mom was an enabler. The truth that they were drowning. After dinner, while Logan was resting his eyes on the sofa, which meant passing out from the wine, and Dad was washing the dishes because Mom claimed her arthritis was acting up, I wandered toward the back of the house. I told myself I was looking for the bathroom. In reality, I was walking toward the study. This was the room where Mom managed the empire. It was a small room with a heavy oak desk that used to belong to my grandfather. The door was ajar. I pushed it open with one finger. The room was messy. Papers were stacked in precarious towers. Unopened envelopes were scattered across the floor. It smelled of stale coffee and anxiety. I stepped inside. I wasn't going to snoop. I didn't need to snoop. I owned the debt. I knew the numbers better than she did. But then, something caught my eye. On the center of the desk, right on top of the blotter, sat a file folder. It was red, and sticking out of it, just an inch, was a piece of paper with a very distinctive letterhead. It was the logo of the bank that held the mortgage. I recognized it because I had spent the last 2 weeks looking at that same logo on the transfer documents. I stepped closer. I tilted my head. The text at the top of the page was visible. Notice of default and acceleration, and below that, in bold, aggressive font demand for full payment. I stared at it. She knew. She knew the house was on the line. She knew the loan for Logan's Vision Stream, or whatever shell company he had used, was in default. She knew the walls were closing in. And yet, out there in the living room, she was pouring him expensive wine and talking about Berlin. She was buying him leather jackets and looking down on my little computer project. She wasn't just in denial. She was delusional, but there was something else. Next to the demand letter was a notepad. My mother's handwriting, frantic and spiky, covered the top page. I leaned in to read it. Options 1. Second mortgage, denied. 2. Cash out Graham's 401k. Penalty too high, 3. Ask Faith. My name was written there. Ask Faith. But she had drawn a line through it, a heavy, dark line, retraced 3 times until the paper nearly tore. She had considered asking me, and she had crossed it out. Why was it pride? Was it shame? Or was it because she knew, deep down, that if she asked me for money, she would have to acknowledge me as an equal. She would have to admit that the low-maintenance child was the only one who could save the ship. And to a narcissist, admitting dependency on the scapegoat is a fate worse than bankruptcy. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Faith, what are you doing in there? It was Mom. Her voice was sharp, suspicious. I straightened up. I didn't touch the papers. I turned around to face the door. Just looking for a charger, I said, my voice steady, my heart beating a slow, cold rhythm against my ribs. I thought I left one here years ago. She stood in the doorway, blocking the light. Her eyes darted to the desk, then back to me. She looked terrified for a split second. Then the mask slammed back into place. "We don't have your chargers, Faith," she said, her voice tight. "We don't keep things that don't belong to us. Come back to the living room. Logan is waking up. He wants to open presents." "Coming," I said. I walked past her. I brushed against her arm. She felt frail. I knew the secret on the desk. She didn't know the secret in my pocket. She had crossed my name out, but she didn't realize that I had already bought the paper she was writing on. I walked back into the light of the Christmas tree, where my brother was waiting to receive gifts he hadn't earned, in a house he had already lost. The dinner table was set like a stage for a play I had seen 1,000 times. The good silver was out, gleaming under the chandelier that my mother insisted on dimming to create ambiance, though it mostly just made it hard to see the dryness of the turkey. I sat in my usual spot. It wasn't officially assigned, but gravity always pulled me there, the chair nearest the kitchen door, the seat with the wobbly leg, the place for the person who was expected to clear the plates. Logan sat at the head of the table. In our family, the head of the table didn't belong to the provider. It belonged to the performer, and tonight, Logan was performing. He was 3 glasses of Cabernet deep, and his cheeks were flushed with the warmth of alcohol and his own self-importance. He was midway through a monologue about the content ecosystem he was building. "You see," Logan said, gesturing with a forkful of stuffing. "Traditional media is dead. It is a corpse. The future is personal branding. People buy people. That is why I need to upgrade my studio setup. If I want to land the Berlin residency, I need to look the part. Mom, did you see the link I sent you for that lighting rig? It is an investment." "I saw it." "Honey," Mom said. She was eating little, spending most of her time watching him, her face arranged in a permanent expression of doting admiration. "It looks very professional. We will figure it out." "We always do," Logan said. Grinning, I cut my turkey. I chewed. I swallowed. I said nothing. My father, Graham, was pushing peas around his plate. He looked tired. He knew about the demand letter on the desk in the other room. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped, the way he flinched every time Logan mentioned spending money, but he stayed silent. His role was to pay the bills until the checks bounced, and then fade into the wallpaper. "Faith," Logan said, suddenly pivoting his attention to me. He needed a foil. A hero is only as good as the villain he defeats, or in Logan's case, the audience he belittles. "You are being very quiet, brooding over the failing app market." I looked up. The market is actually quite robust. "Please," Logan scoffed. He poured himself more wine, not bothering to offer the bottle to anyone else. "It is a race to the bottom. I was reading an article in Forbes, the headline anyway, that said 90% of tech startups fail within the first 2 years. You are coming up on year 3, right? That puts you in the danger zone." "We are doing fine, Logan," I said. "Fine," he mimicked, rolling his eyes. "That is your favorite word. Fine. You aim so low, Faith. That is your problem. You are content with a little salary, a little apartment, a little life. You have no killer instinct," Mom chimed in, her voice dripping with that passive-aggressive sweetness she had perfected. "Now, Logan, don't be mean. Faith likes her simple life. Not everyone is meant to be a mogul like you. Some people are just support staff, and that is okay. The world needs workers." I felt the muscle in my jaw jump. Support staff. "I am just saying," Logan continued, emboldened by her backup. "It is embarrassing. I am out here trying to build a legacy, and my sister is running some glorified calculator app. It is worthless. Faith, honestly, you should just shut it down and come work for me as an assistant. I could use someone to handle my scheduling." "Your company," I said clearly, "doesn't exist." The table went silent. The clink of silverware stopped. Logan's face darkened. "Excuse me. You don't have a company," I repeated, my voice steady, cutting through the warm, stuffy air of the dining room like a scalpel. "You have a series of failed ideas funded by our parents' retirement savings. You are not a mogul. You are a dependent." "Faith," Mom slammed her hand on the table. "That is enough. Apologize to your brother. He is under a lot of pressure." "He is unemployed," I said. "I am an entrepreneur," Logan shouted, spit flying from his lips. "And what are you?" "You are a nobody. You are driving a rental car because your own car is probably broken down. Your company is garbage. It is worthless." He leaned over the table, his eyes full of malice. "Admit it," he sneered. "You are broke. You came home because you failed." I looked at him. I looked at the vein throbbing in his forehead. I looked at my mother, who was glaring at me with pure hatred for daring to puncture the bubble of her golden boy. I placed my fork down. I picked up my napkin and dabbed the corners of my mouth. "I didn't fail," I said. "Bullshit," Logan spat. "And I don't have the company anymore." I continued. Logan threw his head back and laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "I knew it. You folded. You went under. Oh, this is rich. After all that high and mighty attitude, you went bankrupt." "I didn't go bankrupt," I said. "I sold it." The laughter stopped abruptly. Logan squinted at me. "You sold it?" "Yes." "For what?" He smirked, trying to regain his footing. "Did some local gym buy you out? What did you get? 50 grand enough to pay off your student loans?" I looked him in the eye. I didn't blink. $150 million. The words hung in the air. They didn't sound like money. They sounded like a physical blow. For a second, nobody moved. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked loudly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Then Logan let out a nervous, high-pitched giggle. "Okay, good joke. You are delusional." "Check the news," I said. Logan stared at me. He saw the stillness in my face. He saw the lack of humor. His hand went to his pocket. He pulled out his phone. His fingers were trembling as he unlocked it. "Summit Well Holdings," I said, providing the search term. "Acquisition, Faith Stewart." I watched him type. I watched the blue light of the screen illuminate his face. I saw the exact moment the search results loaded. His eyes widened. His jaw went slack. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like the blood had been sucked out of him by a vacuum. He went from flushed red to a sickly, pasty gray. "No," he whispered. "No way." He scrolled. He tapped a link. He read. "What?" Mom asked, her voice shrill. "What is it, Logan?" "What does it say?" Logan looked up. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look at me with contempt. He looked at me with fear. Pure, unadulterated fear. "It is real," he croaked. "CNN Business, TechCrunch, The Wall Street Journal, health tech unicorn Pulse Habit acquired for $150 million in all-cash deal." Mom dropped her fork. It hit the china plate with a violent crack. She turned to me. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. She looked at my plain black sweater. She looked at my face, which was devoid of any emotion. $150 million, she whispered. "After taxes and payouts to my staff. It is a little less," I said casually. "But yes, the wire cleared yesterday." I watched the wheels turn in her head. I watched the shock recede, replaced instantly by something much uglier. She didn't smile. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't reach out to touch my hand in pride. Her face twisted into a mask of betrayal. "Why didn't you tell us?" she demanded. Her voice rose to a shriek. "How could you keep this from us? We are your family, Faith. How could you be so selfish?" "I didn't hide it," I said. "You never asked? You asked about the weather? You asked if I was eating? You never asked about the business." "I asked," she lied. "I always ask. Oh my God, 150 million. She stood up. She walked around the table toward me. She wasn't coming to hug me. She was coming to claim me. She was coming to stake her territory. "Faith, baby," she said, her voice suddenly changing, dropping into that wheedling, manipulative tone she used when she wanted Dad to sign a check. "This is a miracle. Do you know what this means?" She reached for my shoulder. I shifted in my chair, avoiding her touch. "It means I am unemployed," I said dryly. "It means you can save us," she said. She didn't even try to hide it. The words just fell out of her mouth, wet and desperate. "Family is family. Faith, we stick together. We share everything." She looked at Logan, who was still staring at his phone as if it were a bomb. "You can help your brother," she said, her eyes shining with greed. "Faith, his debt, the house, the business. You can wipe it all clean. It would be nothing to you. A drop in the bucket. You can set him up properly. He needs a real studio. He needs capital." I stared at her. It was breathtaking. The speed of it. Not 30 seconds ago. I was support staff. I was worthless. Now, I was the savior. But I wasn't a person to her. I was an ATM that had finally dispensed cash. "Help him?" I asked quietly. "Yes, of course." Mom beamed. seemingly oblivious to the ice in my voice. He is your brother. He has so much potential. Faith, he just needs a break. And you have been so lucky. It is only fair. Lucky. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I wasn't lucky, I said. I was working. While Logan was having pony parties, I was studying. While you were buying him cars, I was taking the bus. While you were refinancing this house to pay for his fake companies, I was eating ramen and coding until my eyes bled. That is not true, Mom protested, clutching her pearls. We treated you exactly the same. You didn't buy me a winter coat until I was 14, I said. I walked to school in a windbreaker. Do you remember that? No, you don't, because you were too busy driving Logan to hockey. She stammered. You spent $200,000 on his college tuition for a degree he never finished, I said, reciting the numbers from the forensic accountant's report. You gave him $40,000 for the failed record label, $60,000 for the crypto investment that went to zero, and now you have put this house up as collateral for a loan he has already defaulted on. Mom went pale. How do you know that? I know everything, I said. I know about the demand letter on your desk. I know you are drowning. Logan stood up, his face red again. You hacked us. You invaded our privacy. You think just because you have money you can judge us. I am not judging you, Logan, I said. I am tallying the receipts. Faith, please, Dad said, speaking for the first time. His voice was trembling. Let's just sit down. Let's talk about this. There is nothing to talk about, I said. I looked at Mom. She was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a cornered animal. But we are family, she sobbed. I am your mother. Doesn't that mean anything to you? Doesn't my love mean anything? Your love, I laughed, and it was a cold, sharp sound that hurt my throat. Mom, your love was a currency, and you spent it all on him. I pointed at Logan. You invested everything in the wrong stock, I said, and now you want me to bail you out. You have to, Logan sneered, trying to regain dominance. You owe us. We raised you. I raised myself, I said. I stepped away from the table. I looked at the congealing gravy, the half-eaten turkey, the wine stains on the tablecloth. It looked like a crime scene. Where are you going? Mom cried, reaching out to grab my arm. I pulled away. I am going back to my hotel, I said. But the money, she stammered. Faith, we are going to lose the house. They are going to take it in January. I know, I said. I turned my back on them. I walked toward the door. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I felt lighter. The secret was out. The bomb had detonated, and I was still standing. Faith, Logan shouted after me. If you walk out that door, don't come back. You are dead to us. You hear me? You are just a vindictive little bitch. I paused at the archway. I didn't turn around. I am not getting revenge. Logan, I said, loud enough for them to hear, but soft enough to force them to listen. I am just finally stopping being the shadow. I walked out the front door into the biting cold of the Christmas night. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was happening inside. I knew the panic. I knew the screaming. And for the first time in 29 years, it wasn't my problem. The morning after Christmas did not bring peace. It brought a digital siege. I woke up at 6 in the morning in my hotel suite, the heavy blackout curtains shielding me from the gray Kansas winter. My phone, which I had left on the bedside table, was vibrating so intensely it was slowly inching its way toward the edge. I picked it up. The notification screen was a solid wall of text. My mother had adopted a strategy of chaotic oscillation. One message was a plea for forgiveness, dripping with guilt and feigned affection. Faith, please answer. I didn't sleep all night. I am worried about your soul. Money destroys families. Don't let this happen to us. The next message, sent 12 minutes later, was a passive-aggressive strike. Your father is having chest pains. I hope you are happy. You have stressed him out so much. Then, back to the manipulation. I made your favorite cinnamon rolls. Just come over for coffee. We can fix this. Logan's approach was less nuanced. His messages were a stream of pure, unfiltered vitriol. You think you are better than us? You are nothing. You stole that idea. I gave you the idea for an app years ago. I am going to sue you. Pick up the phone, you coward. You owe me. I am going to destroy your reputation. I know people. I didn't reply. I didn't block them, either. I screenshotted everything, every threat, every guilt trip, every incoherent rant. I uploaded them directly to a secure cloud folder shared with my legal team. Data is not emotional. Data is evidence. At 9 o'clock, a bellboy knocked on my door. He held a thick manila envelope. "Courier dropped this off for you. Ms. Stewart," he said. Marked urgent. I tipped him $5 and took the envelope. It had the return address of a local law firm I had never heard of, something generic. Located in a strip mall, the kind of firm that advertises on billboards next to the highway. I opened it. It was a demand letter, but it wasn't a standard legal document. It was a work of fiction. The letter claimed that the Stewart family estate was seeking reimbursement for historical costs of upbringing and incubation of talent. It listed a demand for $3 million. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud in the empty hotel room. It was a dry, sharp sound. They were trying to invoice me for my own childhood. They were claiming that the food I ate, the roof over my head, and the emotional support they provided were venture capital investments that were now due for a return. I scanned the document and sent it to Elena, my attorney in Omaha. Her reply came 3 minutes later. "Is this a joke?" I typed back. "No. It is a desperation move. Handle it." Elena didn't just handle it. She obliterated it. By noon, my legal team had drafted a response. It wasn't an emotional defense. It was a ledger. We had compiled a forensic accounting of the Stewart family finances based on the records I had acquired when I bought their debt. We listed the expenditures: tuition for Logan Stewart, $240,000; vehicle purchases for Logan Stewart, $85,000; legal fees for Logan Stewart's DUI defense, $15,000; business capital for Logan Stewart's failed ventures, $120,000; total direct investment in Faith Stewart. After age 18, $0. We attached a spreadsheet. We sent it back to the strip mall lawyer with a brief note stating that any further harassment would result in a countersuit for extortion. But the real blow was yet to come. While Elena was digging through the files to prepare our defense, she found something else. She called me at 1 in the afternoon. "Faith," she said. Her voice was serious, lacking its usual confident lilt. "Are you sitting down?" "I am standing," I said, looking out the window at the frozen city. "We ran the signature verification on that secondary credit line, the one attached to the house, the one you said you didn't sign. And it is a confirmed forgery," she said, "but it is worse than just a bad copy. We traced the notary stamp. It belongs to Janice Miller, your mother's friend. We pressured her office this morning. She cracked. She admitted she notarized the document without you present because your mother told her you were on the phone and had authorized it." I felt a cold chill radiate from my chest. "When was it signed?" I asked. "May 12th, 3 years ago." Elena said. I closed my eyes. I remembered that date. I remembered it perfectly. "I was in the hospital," I said quietly. "I had appendicitis. I was in post-op recovery in Omaha on May 12th. "Then we have them," Elena said. "This is bank fraud. This is identity theft. This is a felony. Faith, if we file this, your mother and brother could go to prison. Janice Miller definitely will." I stood there, holding the phone. I held the power to destroy them completely. I could make one call, and the police would be knocking on the door at 42 Maple Drive. But that was too easy. Prison was a systemic punishment. I wanted a personal reckoning. "Don't file the criminal charges yet," I said. "Hold it. It is my ace." "Faith, this is dangerous," Elena warned. "They are desperate. Desperate people do irrational things." "I know," I said. "That is why I'm calling for a mediation." I sent the email myself. I copied my mother, Logan, and their discount lawyer. "I am willing to discuss a settlement regarding the property and the outstanding debts. I will meet you tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the Regas Conference Center downtown. I will bring my legal counsel. I suggest you bring yours." It was a trap. I wasn't going there to settle. I was going there to get them to admit, on the record, in front of a court-certified mediator, exactly what they had done. I wanted the confession before I dropped the guillotine. The reaction was immediate. Mom switched tactics again. She stopped texting me and started posting on Facebook. She wrote long, vague posts about ungrateful children and the pain of a mother's heart. She didn't name me, but she tagged half the neighborhood. She claimed she was sick. She claimed the stress was killing her. She was building a narrative where she was the martyr, and I was the villain who had abandoned them the moment I got rich. Logan went lower. He started calling our extended family. My cousin, a girl I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, texted me, "Is it true you are suing your own mom? Logan says you are trying to evict them just because you can. He was poisoning the well. He was trying to isolate me, to shame me into submission. He thought that if he made me look like a monster, I would pay him just to make it stop. He didn't understand that I had no reputation to lose in this family. I was already the ghost. You can't kill a ghost. I stayed in the hotel room for the rest of the day, working. I had a company to run. Even if I had sold it, I had a transition strategy to manage. I focused on the code, on the user metrics. It was calming. It was logical. But the storm was moving closer. The next morning, the day of the mediation, I decided to stop by a temporary co-working space I had rented in downtown Kansas City to print some documents. It was a glass-walled office on the ground floor, visible from the street. I was standing at the printer, collating the evidence of the forgery, when I heard a commotion outside. I looked up. A car had screeched to a halt in the loading zone. It was Logan's car, the flashy, leased SUV he couldn't afford. He got out. He wasn't wearing his mogul suit today. He was wearing a disheveled hoodie, and his eyes were wild. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 48 hours. He saw me through the glass. He didn't buzz the intercom. He didn't call. He stormed toward the door and started pounding on the glass. "Faith!" he screamed. The sound was muffled by the double-pane window, but the rage was audible. "Come out here, you coward! Come out here and face me!" People in the coffee shop next door stopped drinking. Pedestrians froze. I stood perfectly still. I didn't approach the door. I just watched him. "You think you can buy us?" he yelled, kicking the glass. "You think you are better than me? I am the genius. I am the one with the vision. You are just a code monkey. Open the door." He was unraveling. The facade of the cool, successful entrepreneur had cracked wide open, revealing the terrified, spoiled child underneath. I saw a young woman at the bus stop pull out her phone. She started recording. Then a guy in the coffee shop held up his phone. Logan didn't notice. He was too busy screaming. "You owe me $3 million, he shrieked, his voice cracking. "Mom said you would pay. She said you always do what you are told. Give me my money. Give me my money. Not help the family. Not save the house. My money." I looked at him, and I felt a wave of pity. It wasn't the warm kind of pity. It was the cold, distant pity you feel for a bug that keeps flying into a window pane. He truly believed he was entitled to my life. He truly believed that my labor was his property. I picked up my phone. I didn't call the police. I called the security desk of the building. "There is a man causing a disturbance at the front entrance," I said calmly. "Please remove him." 2 minutes later, 2 uniformed guards appeared. They grabbed Logan by the arms. He thrashed. He spat. "Get off me. Do you know who I am? My sister is inside. She is stealing from me. Faith, don't you dare walk away." I turned my back. I walked back to the printer. I picked up the stack of papers. The top sheet was the affidavit from the notary, confirming the forgery. Behind me, the screaming faded as they dragged him away. But the damage was done, not to me, but to him. I checked Twitter 10 minutes later. The video was already up. Title: Crazy Guy Attacks Tech CEO in Downtown KC. Public Freakout Entitlement. It had 4,000 views and was climbing. I watched the video. I watched my brother scream, "Give me my money," while I stood calm and silent behind the glass. It was the perfect preview for the mediation. He had just given the world a character witness statement, and he didn't even know it. I put the phone in my pocket. I adjusted my blazer. I checked my reflection in the dark glass of the printer. I looked sharp. I looked ready. I walked out the back exit, got into my rental car, and drove to the lawyer's office. It was time to end this. The conference room at the mediation center was a study in beige neutrality. It was designed to be calming, with its abstract art and soft lighting, but the tension in the room was sharp enough to cut the heavy oak table in half. On one side sat my mother and Logan, flanked by their strip mall attorney, a man named Mr. Henderson, who looked like he had slept in his suit. On the other side sat me, Elena, and a junior associate from her firm who was recording the minutes. At the head of the table sat the mediator, a retired judge with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen every variation of human greed. Denise was dressed in black, as if she were attending a funeral. She was weeping into a tissue before the session had even officially begun. It was a performance, a preemptive strike to garner sympathy. She looked frail, small, and utterly victimized. Logan, by contrast, was vibrating with aggressive energy. He was tapping a pen against the table, his leg bouncing up and down. He wouldn't look at me. He stared at the wall, muttering to his lawyer. Let us begin, the mediator said, his voice gravelly. We are here to discuss the claims made by the Stewart family regarding the estate and the counterclaims regarding financial impropriety. Mr. Henderson, you may open. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He looked nervous. He knew he was outgunned. Thank you, Your Honor. My clients, Denise and Logan Stewart, assert that they are entitled to a fair portion of the proceeds from the sale of Pulse Habit. This claim is based on two factors. First, the sweat equity provided by the family in raising and supporting Ms. Stewart. Second, and more importantly, the intellectual property contributions made by Mr. Logan Stewart. I raised an eyebrow. This was a new angle. Intellectual property, the mediator asked, looking over his glasses. Yes, Logan interrupted, unable to help himself. He leaned forward, his eyes manic. I helped her. Back in the beginning. She was struggling with the user interface. I told her it needed to be cleaner. I gave her the idea for the mood tracking feature. We brainstormed it at the kitchen table. She took my notes, built the code, and cut me out. I sat perfectly still. It was a lie so bold it was almost impressive. Logan hadn't been at a kitchen table with me since I was 10. He had never seen the code. He had never even downloaded the app until yesterday. Do you have any documentation of this collaboration? The mediator asked. Emails, sketches, text messages. It was verbal, Logan snapped. We are family. We didn't sign NDAs at dinner. I trusted her, and she stole my billion-dollar idea. Ms. Stewart, the mediator turned to me. I didn't speak. I simply nodded to Elena. Elena opened a thick binder. The sound of the rings snapping open was loud in the quiet room. We have the Git logs, Elena said, her voice cool and professional. These are the digital records of every line of code written for Pulse Habit. They show the exact time, date, and author of every feature implementation. The mood tracking feature was coded by Faith Stewart and her lead developer, Leo, during a hackathon in Omaha 2 years ago. At that time, according to social media records, Mr. Logan Stewart was at a music festival in Coachella. She slid a paper across the table. It was a screenshot of Logan's Instagram from that weekend, holding a beer, captioned, "Living my best life." Unless he was coding telepathically from a desert rave, Elena said dryly. His claim is factually impossible. Logan's face turned a deep, blotchy red. That is technicalities. I gave her the vision. Let us move on to the financial claims, the mediator said, clearly unimpressed. The family is asking for $3 million in restitution. We are also asking, Mr. Henderson added, sweating slightly, that Ms. Stewart assume full responsibility for the outstanding mortgage on the family home and the business loan for LS Media Group, totaling $450,000. The family contends that Ms. Stewart verbally agreed to backstop these loans. I see, the mediator said. He looked at me. Ms. Stewart, did you agree to this? No, I said. She is lying. Denise sobbed, looking up from her tissue. She told me on the phone, she said, Mom, do whatever you need to do. I have your back. She gave me permission. She knows how much we struggled to help her through college. I looked at my mother. I looked at the tears streaming down her face. They were real tears, but they were born of fear, not sadness. She was terrified of the truth coming out. We have a document, Mr. Henderson said, pulling a paper from his briefcase. This is the loan modification agreement. It bears Ms. Stewart's signature as a guarantor. The mediator took the document. He examined it. It appears to be notarized. It is, Henderson said triumphantly. It is a forgery, I said. The room went silent. That is a serious accusation, the mediator said. It is a proven fact, I replied. I reached into my own folder. I pulled out the affidavit from Janice Miller. I pulled out the forensic analysis of the digital signature. I pulled out the hospital records proving I was under anesthesia when the document was supposedly signed. I laid them out on the table, one by one, like a royal flush. Exhibit A, I said. Statement from the notary. Janice Miller, admitting she was coerced by Denise Stewart to notarize the document in my absence. Exhibit B, my medical records. Exhibit C, the IP trace of the device used to apply the digital signature, which corresponds to an iPad registered to Logan Stewart. I watched the color drain from my mother's face. She stopped crying. She looked like a statue made of ash. Logan stopped tapping his pen. He looked at the documents, then at his lawyer, then at the door. This constitutes bank fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft, Elena stated. These are federal crimes. The penalty is up to 30 years in prison. Mom didn't mean to, Logan blurted out, throwing her under the bus instantly. She just thought Faith wouldn't mind. Faith always said she wanted to help. I never said that, I corrected him. You tricked us, Logan yelled. You set us up. I didn't set you up, I said. I just caught you. The mediator looked at the documents, then at Henderson. Counselor, your clients are in significant jeopardy here. If these documents are turned over to the district attorney, this mediation is over, and criminal proceedings will begin. Henderson looked like he wanted to vanish. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement. There is one more thing, I said. I wasn't done. I had played the defense. Now it was time for the offense. The loan you defaulted on, I said, looking directly at Logan. The business loan for L.S. Media Group. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings on the house last month. Correct. Logan swallowed hard. Yeah, so what? They are going to take the house. That is why we need the money. You witch. They aren't going to take the house, I said. What? Denise whispered. Did you pay it? Hope flared in her eyes. It was pathetic. Even now, after I had exposed her crime, she was hoping I had saved her. Not exactly, I said. I signaled to Elena. She slid the final document across the table. It was a deed of trust transfer. I didn't pay the loan for you, I said. I bought it. I leaned forward. I am the sole owner of Hollow Creek LLC. That is the entity that purchased your distressed debt from the bank 3 days ago. I own the mortgage on the house. I own the note on Logan's business loan. I am not your sister right now. Logan, I am not your daughter. Mom, I am your creditor. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum where no air existed. My mother looked at the document. She looked at the name Hollow Creek LLC. She looked at me. And she realized the absolute power shift that had just occurred. I held the roof over their heads. I held their freedom from prosecution. I held their entire existence in my hands. You own the house, she whispered. I do, I said. Which brings us to the resolution. I placed 2 sheets of paper on the table. Option A, I said. You sign this document. It is a full confession of the forgery. Signed by both of you. It is a release of all claims against me and my company. In exchange, I will refrain from filing the criminal charges. I will allow you to continue living in the house, provided you pay rent, market rate, $1,800 a month, Logan. You will get a job, a real job, and you will pay me back the business loan in monthly installments. If you miss a payment, I evict you. If you slander me again, I file the criminal charges. I pointed to the second paper. Option B, I said. You refuse? I walk out of here. I hand the forgery evidence to the FBI. I foreclose on the house immediately. You will be homeless and likely facing indictment before the end of the week. I sat back. Choose? Logan looked at the papers. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. But it was the hatred of the defeated. He knew he had no leverage. He knew I had outplayed him. You can't do this, he hissed. I am your brother. That is the only reason you aren't in handcuffs right now, I said. Why are you doing this? He shouted, slamming his fist on the table. Why do you hate us? You have everything, you have millions. Why couldn't you just let us use your name? You wouldn't even have noticed the debt. You can handle it. You have always been able to handle it. There it was, the confession. Because I can handle it, I repeated slowly. That was your justification, because I was strong enough to survive your neglect. You thought you were entitled to add to the weight. We needed it, Logan screamed. I needed it. I am special. Faith, I am not like you. I can't work at a coffee shop. I can't be a drone. I needed the chance. You had 1,000 chances, I said. And you wasted every single one. I looked at my mother. She wasn't looking at Logan. She was looking at me. She was seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time. She saw the cashmere coat. She saw the steel in my spine. She saw the woman who had surpassed her golden boy in every conceivable metric. She realized she had bet on the wrong horse for 30 years. Faith, she whispered. Her voice was trembling. Faith, I am sorry. It was the phrase I had wanted to hear since I was 7 years old. I am sorry. I waited for the rush of relief. I waited for the healing warmth. It didn't come. The words fell flat. They were hollow. They were said not because she regretted hurting me, but because she had lost. She was apologizing to the conqueror, not the child. I know you are, I said. But it is too late. Please, she begged, reaching across the table. Don't make us pay rent. Don't humiliate us like this. We are family. Sign the papers, I said. She looked at the mediator. He looked away. She looked at her lawyer. He nodded. Defeated. With a shaking hand, Denise picked up the pen. She signed the confession. She signed the rental agreement. Logan sat there, fuming, tears of rage in his eyes. He grabbed the pen and scribbled his name so hard, he tore the paper. I hate you, he whispered as he pushed the paper back. I hope you die alone with your money. I won't be alone, I said, taking the papers and handing them to Elena. I will be with people who respect me. I stood up. I buttoned my coat. The rent is due on the 1st, I said. You can mail the check to the P.O. box listed in the agreement. Do not contact me personally. All communication goes through my lawyer. I looked at them one last time. The golden boy, slumped and broken. The mother, aged 10 years and 10 minutes, stripped of her delusions. I didn't feel triumph. I felt lightness. I turned and walked out of the conference room. I walked through the lobby, past the security guard, and pushed open the heavy glass doors. The winter air hit me like a slap, cold and bracing. It was snowing again. The flakes were large and soft, covering the dirty city streets in a layer of clean white. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sharp. It tasted like freedom. For 20 years, I had been carrying a heavy, wet wool coat that didn't fit me. I had been carrying their expectations, their failures, their indifference. I had walked with my head down, hoping they would notice how well I carried the burden. Today, I had taken it off. I had left it on the conference table. I was cold, but it was a good cold. It was the cold of being alive. I walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. I didn't drive toward the highway. I drove toward the airport. I had a flight to catch. I had a team in Omaha waiting for me. I had a life to build. A life that belonged entirely, unequivocally, to me. As I merged onto the freeway, leaving the skyline of Kansas City behind in the rearview mirror, I realized that the revenge wasn't the money. It wasn't the debt. It wasn't the legal victory. The revenge was that I was going to be happy, and they were going to have to watch it from a distance, in a house they no longer owned. If you are the child who will be fine, the one they never worry about because you are too strong to break, ask yourself this: when will you stop waiting for them to see you and start seeing yourself? Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening on your commute, at the gym, or maybe while working on your own empire? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Like this video, and hit that hype button so we can share more stories of justice and resilience with the world.